How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a long-awaited W140 video. Now, I know you guys have been bugging me to put out more W140 content, and I've been wanting to. It's just things have gotten busy in my life, and honestly, I just haven't had time to invest in these cars, and I want to put out good content for you guys. Today, I'm going to do something fun. We're going to test out something that I've been wanting to test out for a while, and that is cleaning out a fuel tank. In fact, cleaning it out almost the wrong way. We're not going to remove the fuel tank. Now, I might do that in a future video because I do have a parts car with a good fuel tank and a working fuel gauge, so I might end up pulling that out. Now, Xavier's actually over there playing around with that car because he's pulling some parts off. He just picked up another, what year is it? 97 S500. So we're going to be doing a few videos on that. I'm going to introduce that car. We're saving as many of these as we can, as much as we can on a budget as well, because I know a lot of you guys out there have these cars. You don't have a ton of money to spend, but you want to keep your car on the road. And maybe someday down the road, you'll have a lot more money to put into it, but you'll have the car in your possession. And that's the most important thing, is keeping these cars on the road. So let's talk about what we're going to do on this video. So I've got some things laid out here. Now, if you're unaware, Dr. Dre, which is my 95 S500 here. Now, this is Barney, another 95 S500 that I sold off to a subscriber, and I'm doing a bunch of work on. I just went ahead and started it up. She is running great right now, and we did a lot of regular maintenance on the last few videos. Dr. Dre needs a lot more stuff. So I've had issues with the fuel filter, fuel tank, just a lot of gunk that was built up in there because the car sat. And I know a lot of you are gonna say, you need to pull the fuel tank, take it out. But what I wanted to test out was something a lot of you guys ask and a lot of videos out there on other cars do, and that is clean the fuel tank out. So I went down and I actually bought a bunch of this Evaporust. I only have one of them sitting here. And what I want to do is empty out all the fuel that's in there. I want to take a look at what fuel is in there. And we're going to go ahead and add this Evaporust to the tank. Now, if you don't know this, the W140s have a screen inside the gas tank. And from what I've heard and what I'm guessing with this car is they do either dissolve or break loose. And that's why a lot of the gunk gets into the tank and then starts clogging up your filter. And that is what's happening to me. Every time I swap the filter out, I get a good few runs with this car. I'll drive it around town for, maybe even a week. And then it starts to act up again. I can pull the fuel filter out and I can see the gunk that comes out the back of it. So what I need to do is get that gunk out of there. So we're gonna go ahead and add as much of this Evaporust as we can, probably a couple of gallons if we have to. Let it sit in there overnight, and then we're gonna drain it out. We're gonna pressure wash out the tank with it in the car, keep in mind. So we're gonna do all this with the tank in the car. And then we're gonna go ahead and swap out the fuel filter, and I'm gonna run an insane amount of sea foam to kind of clean out all the injectors and just clean out the whole system. I'm gonna add this to probably maybe a 1 to 2 fuel ratio. So with this, what is this, a gallon? I'm gonna probably add this whole gallon. I wanna really see what we can do, and then maybe add 2 gallons of fuel to that and just let the car run till most of this runs down, and then add a little more fuel to it. So that's kind of the agenda. Let's get started. I'm gonna drain out what fuel's in there now, and then we're gonna add the Evaporust, let it sit overnight, and I'll show you guys kind of how each of these processes look. So let's see what the fuel looks like that's sitting in there now. I got the filter pulled out. Let's go ahead and take a look at how dirty the fuel is coming out the opposite side here. Oh yeah, and look at that. I knew this was creating an issue right here. So this is a brand new filter that I probably put like maybe 40-50 miles on the car before the car just completely stopped driving, and this whole filter is just getting clogged up. So that is definitely the issue. Hopefully we can resolve this, like I said, without taking our tank out, and if it doesn't work, we'll just pull the tank out and go that route. Just look at that fuel that came out of that filter. I'm gonna dump this out, and then we're gonna go ahead and pull from the tank and see what comes out of that. All right, our fuel's coming from the tank. It looks a little dirty, but we'll see in the bucket. You know what? I don't remember how much fuel I left in here. I'll hook it back up to the fuel pump, and we'll take a look at what's in the bucket and go from there. But I might have more than 10 gallons in here. That's not good. Guys, the fuel didn't look too bad when it was coming out, but if you look down there, there is a ton of dirt that's in that tank. Now, don't mind that washer that came off of the hose line, but there is definitely a lot of dirt in there. So what I want to do now is, I might want to try to save this fuel if I can filter it out. I'm going to move it over to this brand new blue bucket I have here. And this bucket was clean. I wiped it out really good. I know it's got some spots on it, but down on the bottom, it was very clean. So all that debris did come out of the tank. I'm going to move this over to the blue bucket so I can still see what comes out of the car, and I should be able to drain the remainder out. And I think there's probably just a couple more gallons. It was starting to slow down at the end, but I want to see what the very end of this tank looks like. So let's get this fuel put over there and keep draining this tank. There's a lot more fuel in there than I thought. I still have some more to go, but look at how much dirt is in the bottom of that right there. So this is the second run here, and I went ahead and tapped out our fuel filter, and just look at how much gunk came out onto this towel right here. So definitely clogged up, definitely our problem. Now, the cool thing is I did find a funnel that I bought a while ago that has a really fine mesh screen in it. So I think what I'm gonna do is recycle this gasoline here and add it to my van, because I just put a brand new filter on my van. And if that gets clogged up, it was really inexpensive and extremely easy to change out. So I'll just change it out if I notice any issues. I think it'll be fine though, because as you're pouring this fuel, all that dirt and debris kind of stays behind. So what I'm gonna do is get down towards the end and then just get rid of all the dirt and grime that kind of stays back. So let's continue. I'll show you guys what that last run of the fuel goes. Then we'll go ahead and add our vapor rust in there. And then you guys will see the next day, we're gonna go ahead and drain all that out and see what that looks like. Just so you can get an idea of all the dirt that was in the bottom here, this is what kind of stays back once I pour it over to the other container through that funnel. So we need to definitely do some cleaning on this tank. Well, pretty much at the end here, and you can see there's some pretty big chunks of material down in there, and the gas kind of looks a little different color. So I may just get rid of this fuel here, but I might filter it out and put it in here, because I'm thinking if we're gonna wash this thing out, we're gonna pressure wash it after we use the evaporust, and I'm almost thinking now I might even pick up some vinegar and mix a few gallons of that, since it's a lot less expensive than the evaporust, and maybe use 1.5 gallons of the evaporust and a couple gallons of vinegar, let it sit in there for a couple of days or at least a day, and then pressure wash it out. I'm thinking if I add some fuel back through it and let that kind of strain out, as long as there's no particles in it, that will kind of get rid of the water that might be settling in there, because I know you do have to let it dry out, and I'm going to try to let it dry out for a couple of days, but I know there'll still probably be a little bit of residue in there, and I want to make sure we don't get any water into our fuel system. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and strain this out back into a fuel tank that I have here and hold on to that, and I might use it, I might not, so I got to kind of debate on that. So let's go ahead and add the evaporust. Now I'm going to go ahead and cap off the fuel line right where it goes into the fuel pump, and we'll go ahead and let this evaporust mixture, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what I'm going to do, sit in there at least overnight. Well guys, Dr. Dre's gas is all drained out, and this is the concoction that we're going to use to try and eliminate what we can of the rust that's in that tank, and I have a feeling this is going to work really well. So I thought I had another gallon of vapor rust, but I have a gallon of blaster, probably identical to vapor rust. So we're going to have this gallon, this 32-ounce bottle, and I picked up 2 gallons of white vinegar. So that should be enough to at least cover the entire bottom of the tank and eliminate what we have in there, or at least a lot of it. Then we're going to go ahead and use the pressure washer to blast out as much of the debris that's in there or remaining in there as we can. We're going to let the tank dry out as much as we can, probably a couple of days of drying out. I'm going to try to use a air hose to blow into there both directions and see if we can get rid of any debris that's in there. Now, this is not the right way to do it, like I said from the beginning, but I have a feeling this is going to work good enough for us to be able to drive this car around until we decide to pull the tank from the parts car over there and put it into Dr. Dre. Now, the main reason why I'm trying to do this is so many of you guys out there have this issue. When you buy a car that's been sitting around, you may not have the time or the means to pull a tank out, or maybe you can't even find a good tank because they're not readily available. I have seen them on eBay from time to time, but they're not always available, and sometimes you buy a used one and it's just as bad as the one that you have. So this is one way that you can try to do it while keeping the tank in the car. Now, you do have to know there is a strainer screen that's in these tanks, and I believe mine is completely gone because all those chunks of rust that came out should have been stopped by the strainer. So we're just going to run it without a strainer, and we're going to keep an eye on our filter. Let's get started. Let's pour all this stuff in there, let it sit, and then we'll see what comes out of there. I'm kind of excited to see what comes out of the tank, so let's get going. Alright guys, this is it. I cannot find my small camera stand, so I'm going to try to mount this camera the best I can to show you guys how this stuff comes out, but I'm pretty excited to see what comes out of this tank, so let's get going. Guys, it's finished draining off, and it's a darkish yellow color, but nothing crazy. A lot better than what I was thinking. Now, I can't see the bottom with all the particles, but I was checking it as it was draining out, and I can tell you there wasn't that many pieces falling out in the very beginning. I want to go ahead and strain this out and see if there's any really heavy chunks in there, but from what I was seeing from the beginning, there's not going to be anything crazy, which I guess is a great thing, because now we can pressure wash it out, probably push most of the remaining stuff out of there. I think this car is going to be really good. I think it's going to have no issues starting up, no issues running, with a fresh filter on there, some fresh fuel in there, and then maybe we do one more filter change out in a few cycles of the gas. So let's go ahead and pressure wash this out, see if we remove any more particles. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and filter this out to see what we get, and then we can let this thing dry out, add some fresh fuel, add our fresh filter in there, see if we get a good startup. I think we're going to. So this is how it looks after spraying the water in there. Definitely still some small particles, but it's getting better and better. What I want to do now is run a little bit more water through there, let that all dry out, and then I'm going to add some fresh gasoline to it, let that kind of drain through so it removes some of the water that's within the gas, and then we'll go ahead and hook up our filter, put some more fresh fuel in there, and start her up. So let's get doing that. I realize if I secure the cap off with a paper towel and run the air, it pressurizes the system and a lot more of the water pushes out, which is great. And that way we can drain out any of the remaining water before we put anything else in it. So guys, I let the tank dry out overnight and then went ahead and added some fresh fuel to it. And I decided to pressurize the system to see if any more gunk came out. And I did the exact same way I did before with a compressed air gun and a towel or cloth in there. And unfortunately, it looks worse than ever. So all of that gunk just kind of settled to the bottom, and it looks like a lot of that vinegar and the mix that we made is in there as well, and a ton of little pieces of particles. So I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna clean that out and then try it again a couple of times by adding fresh fuel and pressurizing it. Maybe we can push all this out. I don't know. I'm kind of getting a little discouraged about this working, but I'm not gonna give up. Let's go ahead and try some more. I'll fill you guys in. So guys, before we go ahead and start her up, and yes, I did add the fuel filter back in, tightened everything up, made sure there was no leaks. Also added in the seafoam, as you guys saw, and about 2 gallons of fresh gasoline. I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about this. Is it worth doing the way that I did it? Absolutely not. There's a ton of better ways to do this. You can pull the fuel tank you have, clean it out outside the car. You could also take the process that I did and make it even better, keeping the fuel tank in there, removing the hose line that you guys saw the fuel coming out of up where the tank is, and that is where your screen would lie. Now, I didn't do that because I don't have a gasket readily available, and yes, you do need to replace the gasket that goes up in there. The tools that I had readily available, because I don't have all my tools here, were not capable of getting up in there and weren't large enough to get over the nut that's there. So you have a dual nut on there, and then you have this like spring clamp that goes around it, It's a tight area, so it's a little more difficult to get into. And I wanted to show you guys if it's possible to get this car to run really well, clean out the tank really well, while keeping the tank in there and doing it with very minimal removal. So that's really the process I wanted to show you guys. Now, the reason why I said this should not be done this way is because it took me forever to get this gas to finally be clean that was coming out of the tank. And as you guys saw there, when I added the pressure to the tank using the air hose, it did become dangerous. It sprayed the fuel all over the place, but it did work. It did remove almost all the gunk that was in there. And I had to do it a ton of times. So I had to add, you know, a few ounces of fuel into there and then add the pressure. Most of it would go right into the bucket, but some of it did spray upwards. So I put a lot of towels down there, made sure I cleaned everything down really well. And this was the end result. So this was the last run that I did. And you guys can see there's almost no particles in there, just really fresh fuel that's in there. So I'm pretty confident this car is gonna run really well. And like I said, it can be done. Came at a cost and a lot of time. Now, I probably could have eliminated some of that stuff like that rust remover. I think I could have just used the vinegar, let that sit in there overnight, and then sprayed everything out. And like I said, if you're willing to remove the hose line from where it goes into the tank, it'll probably flush out way easier. You can probably get up in there really good. But like I said, I wanted to show you guys if it can be done using minimal tools and minimal removal of stuff. With that said, let's go ahead and start the car up. I can't wait to hear this car run again, and I have a feeling it's gonna run really well. I'll fill you guys in on a future video if it continues to run really well, but I'm thinking I'm gonna order another fuel filter just to be safe and change that out after at least a couple 100 miles. So let's get going. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. And just like that, she started up, guys. It started up pretty quickly too. Now you gotta remember, it takes a little while for the fuel to get up front. That's why it started and stalled, but it seems like it's running really good. Nothing out of the norm. Come back here, just make sure we don't see any weird smoke or anything, which I don't think we will. And nope, a bunch of vinegar in there. Let that sit overnight while capping off that hose line. Well guys, unfortunately there was a small leak at the fuel filter. I tightened it all back up. It's not leaking anymore, but the car's not starting. I even checked the fuel pressure at the fuel rail. I have pressure there, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on. So I went ahead and added more gas to the tank. I realized I probably have way too much seafoam compared to gas, and it's probably not gonna burn off right. And sure enough, after a few starts, it fired up and it's smoking that seafoam off like crazy. And I'm probably just gonna have to swap my spark plugs out because it's probably gonna foul those out. But these are old spark plugs, I haven't changed them yet, so it's gonna work out. Now the car is running, I'm gonna keep kind of like revving through it to kind of free up anything that might have been in the injectors. That was the reason why I wanted to run so much seafoam, is because I wasn't sure how much of this bad fuel made it to the injectors, possibly clogged them up. But you can see, let me go ahead and rev it. You'll be able to see how much smoke is coming out the back here. And that's pretty much just seafoam burning off. Once again, you guys have an awesome day, a blessed week, and I'll keep you updated on how this car runs on a future video. I'll catch you guys later.